you go as a personal coach, you're a leader, you have a podcast, you've written books. Like, what led you to start all of this? Because, I mean, I know your Insta bio will say you're a motivational speaker, but how did you get into all of that? 'Cause that's a different path from what most choose when you're going up in school and
Of course.
trying to figure out what's next, you know?
I guess it's a long story, but I'll try to sort of consolidate it in the best way. So, at the age of 14, I was sort of like deciding what I wanted to do. And my parents were like, oh, why don't you do architecture? So I tried the whole architecture thing, went on work experience, didn't really like it. And then I decided, let me sort of utilize my strengths that I sort of sought after in school. So I thought, let me try medicine. Okay, there's things about prestige, a sense of authority.
What country are you from?
Ghana.
Did you get the whole you got to be a doctor stuff as well?
Well, yes, but I wasn't pressured.
See, I respect that. I had to fight man off, man.
I will not do it.
I was like, do you want to be a doctor? No.
Yeah.
I'd be like, but no. Then he'd be like, but no.
Well, I guess the difference here is I entertained it.
I respect that. I respect that.
So I thought, okay, I don't really understand any other roles. So I tried to do the whole medicine thing. Didn't get the grades. So I went to Leicester University and got an alternative offer. Continued then on and really sort of like, I won't say I made a name for myself in Leicester, but, a lot of people knew me for my vibe, my energy, things I used to say, all of that kind of stuff. And then I didn't get the grades to get into medicine from a graduate point of view. So I decided to do something called the GAMSAT, which took me like 4 years to really try to conquer, and I still didn't pass, five sort of like shots in a row. So I decided, is this for me or is there something else? And what people have always said is that I have the ability to invigorate, inspire, and empower people.
Yeah.
So I thought maybe there's something about using my voice in the right sort of way. But I didn't want to just use my voice. I wanted to sort of make a living from it as well.
Yeah, that's key.
So I went through a process of trying out different business ideas. I tried network marketing. I tried property. I tried trading. I tried other sort of walks. And then it sort of boiled down to the personal branding. So coaching, speaking, and everything else. And so when I started to showcase my stuff online, that's when I started to get more opportunities. People asking me to speak for them, coach them, and everything else. And yeah, the rest is history pretty much.
Fair enough. So you've used social media, in particular Instagram,
Yes,
to really push yourself.
Of course.
How have you been able to do that? Because in the world we live in today, Instagram, Facebook, but Instagram is key, Twitter's key, Snapchat still very key, even though it's had its issues recently.
Of course.
How have you been able to grow yourself on this platform?
I think people may not like hearing this, but I'd like to say that I've trusted the process. And one, I've needed to understand how the game works, and the game is based on making sure that you provide the right sort of value. You get people to know, like, and trust you.
Yeah.
So in order for me to do that, I needed to produce enough content to create credibility, but also sort of like draw people into the message that I'm trying to produce.
Yeah.
So I've always focused on something called attraction marketing.
Okay.
You don't go out to chase the opportunities come towards you, and then you can decide as to what you want to choose. I had no theory for it necessarily working, but then over time it produced results. And that's how I've been able to create opportunities through that attraction marketing method, making sure that I produce a brand online, not just on Instagram, but on my website, and on my other social media as well.
Yeah. How were you able to perfect the website? Because I know we talked about it previously, and like you've adapted your website so that it's more mobile friendly.
Yep.
What caused the change?
So I started to observe other websites. So there are certain other influencers I follow, such as there's a guy called Stefan James who has something called Project Life Mastery, and there are a few other people as well. And looking at what they did, I started to think, how is my website being seen? How am I sort of reflecting myself as this personal brand or as this person who supposedly, provides this value? So then, upon talking to different people, I realized that there was this tactic I wasn't really utilizing properly. And I think a web designer, a web coder, they learn how to make e-commerce websites where they almost force the individual to click on certain things. So I adopted that sort of ideology and placed it onto my website. Checking out different themes and playing around with stuff, and eventually I got with what I came up with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, fair enough. Well, as I was saying off camera, it's very slick, very
Thank
easy
you.
to
Thank
use.
you.
So
Thank
I
you very
appreciate that.
much.
You've also written a couple of books.
Yeah.
So what inspired those? And you got one of them with you today?
Yes. So I've got my first ever book. So this is Understand, Reach, Expand, 15 Super Effective Ways to Manage Your Mind. And effectively, this book aims to allow people to understand themselves a bit more. And what I mean by that is understanding their core values, their core beliefs, and how they can use that to shape their purpose, how they can use that to really identify what they are about. Because what I've realized is that a lot of people are not honest with themselves. A lot of people live in this bubble. Yes.
Yeah.
So that's part of the reasons why I wrote this book. And the second book is Desire, the Cornerstone Between Nothing and Success.
Yeah.
Which is basically a follow-on from that book and really sort of gives people the mental fortitude to stick out in their goals.
Yeah.
And go beyond them.
No, I respect that. So when did you write those books?
So the first book it's an interesting story actually. So the first time I ever wrote any books was back in 2014.
Yeah.
And I failed miserably. So I resurrected the idea when I met a few people at a property networking event.
Yeah.
And, we read this book called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And we decided to start our own mastermind with just us two.
Oh, fair enough.
So she invited me to a book event by this guy called Jerry Roberts. It was free. And I was like, I can do this myself.
Yeah.
So on the 27th of January 2016, I started writing my first book. I was like, it's going to take 30 days to complete. I failed miserably. But what I ended up doing is writing all 10 of my books. So all 10 books were written in draft. It took 11 months. And I decided to release them sequentially once I was ready to release them. So this effectively would have been chapter 1 of my book.
Fair enough.
But it ended up being book 1.
Why the change? Did you think it was easier to just release shorter books?
Definitely. No one's going to read a 900-page book.
Not anymore, no. Not anymore.
Yeah. Those days are gone.
No, they are gone.
Unless you're in church, you're reading the Bible. It's a different story.
Yeah. No, I hear you, man. I respect that. I respect the process. So how do you motivate? So, nowadays a lot of the social stuff has been kicking off and people are trying to empower each other.
Of course.
Childish Gambino released a track saying this is America, and a lot of stuff's going on about empowering, but there's not a lot of advice and hows and any real process to it.
Of course.
How do you motivate but also give advice that is constructive?
I think it's about making sure that you don't get carried away.
Yeah.
And it's about making sure that you consolidate it to an idea.
Yeah.
So for me, it's about making sure that people have the right sort of intelligence and mental fortitude to achieve their goals. It's about achievement. So what is the science behind achievement? And I've had to really sort of break it down to understand what that is. On a very basic level, my fundamental sort of ideology behind any sort of achievement is understand, reach, expand. And that's why I've chose that title. I believe one needs to understand themselves and others in order to, go beyond their goals. 2, they need to have some sort of reach. So where's the planning involved in that? Where's the strategy? What are you doing to, draw yourself closer towards it? And once you get to that point, then it's about expansion. Yeah. Because you don't want to just stand at that point. You want to sort of shine and be bold in what you're doing. That's the basic sort of ideology behind it. But to answer your question, it's about making it scientific. Yeah. Not just saying, you are great because you're human or something silly like that. I don't know. Yeah. I'm just saying anything.
No, I see what you mean, but it's just you want there to actually be a reason behind whatever it is. You can't just say you're great. Yeah. But what's the proof?
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
We're all great, which makes us all the same, which doesn't necessarily make some people feel special. For others, that may be motivation. But what is great about you as an individual?
Yeah.
You know, what defines your greatness?
Yeah.
And this is why it's so important to understand the values that you bear as a human being. Because if you don't have those core principles or core values, it's very difficult to maneuver, you know, in this space that we call life, or the experience that we actually, you know, embody.
No, I respect that. I respect that. Do you have you have something coming up that you're going to be able to help people and advise people? I think it's in July?
Yes, so this is slightly different from the leadership and sort of personal development space. So I'll be partnering with my friend Chima Nwosu and my other friend Emmanuel Asukwo. His brand is Nowhere Excel. And we're pretty much putting together a sort of workshop for personal brands and startups to really understand how they can start their own business. You know, going from market research to minimum viable products to what sort of finances you need, in addition to sort of your marketing efforts as well. And we think this is important to do because, again, like we were saying before, there are lost people in this generation.
Oh, God.
They need direction. You know, so, and we have some experience in this. So we thought, why not? So 28th of July will be held in the Rise Auditorium in Old Street from 12 o'clock.
Not a bad place to be, Old Street. Not a bad place to be. So we were talking about stuff off camera, like regarding this, and guys attend it. It's going to be big. It's going to be useful. But we're talking about critical thinking.
Of course.
And how we don't critically evaluate ourselves anymore. Why do you think that is? And how can you overcome that to help you push on?
So one easy sort of answer would be technology. But again, it's not technology's fault. It is how we use technology. It's how we've been able to adapt around technology. I would say we've used technology in such a way to make us reliant upon it in certain ways, which is both a good and bad thing. But we haven't sort of addressed ways in which we can exercise our mental capacities. So if something's being said in the news, how do you know it's true? What's the agenda behind the news? What's the agenda behind the actual thing that's being said? What does that mean for you as an individual? We can't be bothered to answer all of these questions. You know, if you think about TV as a medium, you know, biologically and, you know, neurobiologically, it helps to relax the mind. And if that's being done, you know, from a psychological point of view, you could argue that's brainwashing. Some people may say that's a bit, you know, extreme, but that's how conditioning works, whether it is a subconscious or conscious thing. So when it comes back to the critical thinking, I believe we need to take stuff like personal development, evaluating stuff within our environment much more seriously, because then you're living a more truer life. And if you can live a more truer life, then you're living a more happier life. And if you can live a more happier life, then you're living a more successful life. You know? And this is why critical thinking is important.
I hear that. And that's actually key, because if you, what we're starting to do now is ignore the signs or just play ignorant. And that's like, and that in itself, doesn't help you to grow, because obviously we're starting to learn, as you grow up, you learn that you need multiple different sources before you make a decision.
Of course.
You can't just go, oh, this is what this person said, or this is what this outlet said, because everything's slightly twisted for the benefit of whoever's in charge.
Of course.
So that's key, actually.
And it's a shame it's that way. You know, we do have an opportunity as, you know, a human species to change that, but it's whether we're willing to change that, especially from a mass scale. You know, and a question one may ask is, how do you do that? You need leaders to sort of make the first step. You know, you lead by example and people follow. But again, that requires a mental change. And that's why I love
you have to unlearn quite a lot, actually,
Exactly.
I hear that. So do you think we can be a product of our environment in that sense sometimes? Or do you feel like that is an excuse? Because you know how it can be both. I'm just asking, like, what would you say it would be?
I think it's the same thing. We're definitely a product of our environment, but it's understanding that we create that environment. And I'm not talking in a sort of like hocus pocus magic sort of way. I'm talking from a very practical point of view. You know, if you put yourself in a group of people who don't have any sort of ambitions that are related to your own ambitions, then you're more likely going to reduce your successes. But if you put yourself in an environment where, you know, people are more likely to want more, you're going to want more.
Yeah.
Now, there are some situations where you can't help the environment, so to speak. So it's almost, how do you control your micro environment? So mentally as well. And I always come back to a quote that Viktor Frankl says in his book, Man's Search for Meaning. And he says that you can't control the stimulus that comes into your environment, but you can control your response. And it's understanding that, you know, and that seems like a drastic thing, but this is a guy who he was in a concentration camp for years, and he watched his friends die. He watched many people die, and he was able to come out.
Yeah.
He could have died himself, but controlling his response in the right way allowed him to come to that conclusion.
Yeah. No, I hear that. That's actually, that's needed. That's good to know. Good to know, guys. Read everything.
Of course.
Read the books, man. So, as a motivational speaker, your job is to motivate and inspire others. How should we be inspired by your journey? So you know how like you've got like Gary Vee and a few other people, for example, like you see their background, you see their story, and you go, oh, what would your story be? That what is it about your story that allows us to be inspired?
It's a very cliche answer, but I'm just like everyone else, and I guess I want people to recognize that I go through the things that they go through as well.
Yeah.
You know, my parents are from Ghana. They didn't have an amazing sort of upbringing. The chances of them being here was very slim. Grew up in a single parent family. Okay, boo-hoo, everyone has. But then, you know, from a financial point of view, you know, I've been in situations where I've been in like £30,000 of debt before, and I've still come on top. I've been in situations where, you know, I've had nothing to eat, where I've had to just rely on corned beef, stew, and rice consistently. You know, you have to do these things. I've been in situations where I've had to use pension money to survive. You know, so the point being made is, I've gone through things that other people have gone through, but I've been able to come out on the other side. And using that knowledge, using that patience, using that fortitude and resilience has allowed me to sort of spew out these words to encourage, empower, and elevate people to really direct themselves towards what they want to be. And that's why I feel like people can sort of be inspired by my journey.
Yeah. Oh, I respect that. Did you have to use Gary as well?
Oh yeah, you know Gary.
Yeah, Gary is true. You know what I mean?
You need to have that, man.
Mate, when Gary is your main source of the stew, you know times are hard. You know times are hard. Like, raw. You're there like, oh, I'm dinner tonight. Gary and stew. Or maybe Gary and fish. I'm just there like,
yeah.
Because Gary's tasteless, isn't it?
Yeah,
like,
of course
it's
it is,
tasteless, so it's like the go-to. It's the final straw, mate.
Definitely.
So, thank you. Your podcast. To discuss that quickly before we come off.
So basically, I've started this podcast called the Masterclass Podcast. You can find it on SoundCloud, Anchor, and iTunes/podcast. And basically, it's where I find business, leadership, careers, and success and mindset people who are inspiring. So you can learn about their journey, but also learn technical skills about what they do. So we've got some lawyers on there. We've got some financial advisors. We've got branding agents. We've got a whole host of different people. So I've only just started that. But check it out. You guys would love it. So yeah, it's been a fun journey so far.
I hear that. Well, Mike, pleasure, man.